You were not born a leader, you were forged into one. For 14 years, you walked alongside your father across the dry savanna, learning to read the sky before the rain arrived, to tell the difference between the roar of a full lion and the roar of a hungry one, to negotiate with neighboring tribes using nothing but words and presence. When he
The
died,
fire burns
3
bright
days
tonight.
after the
It
last
warms
great
our
harvest,
stories
as if
and
he had
lights our
waited
path
to
ahead.
make sure you would be all right, the Council of Elders placed the leopard tooth necklace around your neck without ceremony, as if it were obvious, as if the weight of those teeth were not enough to bend a man in half. You lead 432 souls. You know that number by heart. Every birth is an addition, every death a subtraction you carry in your chest like a stone. Your people plant sorghum and millet, raise goats, hunt at the river's edge when the waters allow. You know the children's names, the grandmother's stories, the fears that men do not say out loud, but that show up in their eyes when the dry season begins to stretch beyond what is expected. You slept well. You had reason to sleep well. Then the second month without rain arrived. It was not a revelation. It was an ordinary morning. You woke before the sun, as always, and walked to the edge of the sorghum field to check the state of the earth. And the earth was wrong. Not dry in the normal way, not the kind of dry that asks for patience. It was a different kind of dry, with a fine gray texture on the surface and a smell you had only encountered once in your life, when you were 11 years old and your father pointed at the horizon and said in that low voice of his, "This one does not end fast." The smell of earth that has given up. You stood there for a stretch of time you could not measure. Then you walked back to the village without saying a word to anyone. You said nothing, because a leader who speaks before he understands creates panic before he creates solutions. But in the weeks that followed, reality spoke for itself. The fields kept shrinking. The goats stopped producing milk. The children began waking up with that expression, not of crying, but of something worse, of quiet expectation, as if they already knew that crying would not help. You sent hunters to the river's edge. They came back with little. You sent scouts to check the neighboring territories. They returned with news you did not want to hear. The drought was not only yours. It belonged to everyone. That was when the emissary arrived. He was from a tribe in the north, the tribe of the 3 lakes, named so because it sat between 3 natural reservoirs that rarely ran dry. You knew them by name. You had never needed more than that. The emissary arrived at dusk, alone, without visible weapons, which was itself a message, and got straight to the point with the polite brutality of those who carry proposals they know are difficult. Our leader offers enough grain to sustain your people through the next rain cycle. You waited. He continued. In exchange, you and 20 of your strongest warriors join us in a campaign against the Iron Valley tribe. 60 days, no more. The Iron Valley tribe. You knew that story. They were not your enemies. They were simply distant, in a region that had never crossed paths with yours. But you knew enough. They were numerous, they were organized, and defending a territory was not the same as attacking one. If you refuse, the emissary said, in the voice of someone completing a formality, there will be no second offer. He slept at the edge of the village. You did not sleep. You accepted before dawn. Not because it was the right decision. You knew it might not be. You accepted because you spent the night doing the only calculation that mattered. 432 souls, 20 warriors, plus yourself, 21. The math was cruel and simple. The days that followed were days of preparation. You had never organized an offensive campaign. Your experience was in defense, in negotiation, in surviving through intelligence before force. But you learned fast, because there was no alternative. You learned to calculate distances by tree markers and rock formations, to set up sentry rotations in unfamiliar territory, to read the silence of a dense forest, because total silence in a place that should have sound means something larger than you has already noticed your presence. Your warriors were good, loyal. Some of them had grown up chasing you in childhood games. Now they were chasing something else behind you. You tried not to think about that head on.
The night before the departure, Amara came to you. Amara had been your companion for 8 years, mother of your 2 children, the only person you spoke to about the things a leader could not say to anyone else. She did not say, "Don't go." She was too smart to say what would not help. She simply sat beside you in the darkness, hands in her lap, and stayed quiet for a long time. Then she said, "When you come back, will you still be you?" You did not answer. She did not wait for one. She stood up, walked into the hut, and you heard the sound of your children breathing in their sleep. A small sound, ordinary, the kind you only notice when you are about to leave. In the morning, when you set out, she was standing at the village's edge. You looked at each other. She did not wave. The campaign lasted longer than 60 days. It lasted because the Iron Valley tribe was not what the Three Lakes leader had described. They were more organized, more entrenched, with a knowledge of the terrain that made the first 3 advances end in retreat. You lost 2 men in the second week, names you will carry forever, families you will have to look in the eye when you return. The Three Lakes leader himself began changing the tone of his orders. What had been a campaign was turning into something closer to a siege. What had been 60 days was turning into for as long as it takes. You began to understand that you had walked into something that did not start with the drought, that the drought had simply been the moment your people became available to be used, that the grain that would save your children was also the instrument that placed you here, in this unfamiliar valley, fighting a war that was not yours for reasons that had never been fully stated. That understanding came slowly, like the drought, and like the drought, it had a smell. The messenger arrived at the camp on the 78th night. He was not from the Three Lakes leader. He was from your own village, a 15-year-old boy who had run for more than 3 days to reach you. His face was covered in dust, and his eyes carried the look of someone who had hauled a heavy piece of news too far. He said only, "The grain arrived, the people are well." You stood still. The boy continued, "Amara says the boys are growing." Then he added, almost as an observation, almost as a small thing, "She also says she understood, that she did not need an explanation." You sent the boy to rest. You stood alone at the edge of the camp, with the smell of distant campfire smoke in the air, with the sound of men sleeping all around you. 432 souls saved. You repeated the number inside yourself like a prayer. You tried to feel the weight you expected to feel, perhaps relief or something resembling victory.
You felt something else. You will go back, that much is certain. Your people will receive you with the noise that tribes make when the leader returns, no matter what happened in his absence. The ritual exists to affirm that the center still holds. The children will run toward you, the elders will bow their heads, the leopard tooth necklace will remain around your neck. But the question the boy brought without knowing, the question Amara had asked in the darkness before the departure, that question does not leave with the ritual. When you go back, will you still be you? Or will you be the leader who saved his people by doing something that cannot be undone, in a war that was not his, for grain that had a price, and who knew since that first sleepless night that he was going to pay it? Drop a comment below telling us what you would have done in his place. There is no right answer, and that is exactly why it is worth the conversation.